Welcome to the Network Engineering video blog. I'm your host, Michael Crane. As you can see before me, I have a deconstructed computer. You might be asking yourself, why do you have a deconstructed computer in front of you? If you remember from video number 29, I was trying to do some Cisco link aggregation group testing, or lag testing. And I was using the MX2s and I wasn't having much luck because they were just basically running out of horsepower. So which is the best option? A test set or a high performance computer? Well, it really depends on how detailed of testing and how much you're going to use it. Are you going to try to automate it? Test sets are probably going to be a little easier to automate than software running on a PC. If you're a network engineer in a big lab or in a telecom type site or a big IT department, and you're going to be doing this testing a lot, and you need reliable, proven test equipment, then the test equipment is probably going to be the better long-term bet. It'll last longer, more than likely, as far as the hardware aging and support, and it's going to give you much better results. However, if you're just doing one-off testing, you're small, you're budget constrained, and you want to be able to maybe repurpose the test set to do something else later, then the computer test set, with some free software on it, or even paid software for that matter, might be a better solution. So you really have to think about what you want to do with it, how much, how reliable do you want your test results, and where you're going to, or do you want to be able to repurpose it later, or are you going to, is this something that you might want to automate and do over and over again? So as a network engineer, I would usually opt for the test set. I know as a network engineer, you will use them over and over again. You can automate them, and so every time you put a new load on a piece of equipment, you can run that automated test, do a sanity check on it. So that would be my choice. But for this video, I wanted to build a PC for around $1,000 that will do not as good a job, but it's 1/5 the price. So okay, we've decided to go ahead and build a PC, and the next step in our thought process is going to be what needs to be in it, and where do we even start? So with our Cisco lag testing, in the last video, if you remember, we needed at least 4 test ports, 3 100 meg ports, 1 gigabit port, and then we needed a management interface. So for a PC it would be 5. Test set, it would be 4 test ports, and then they usually have their own management interface. So we know we need 5 ports. At least 1 Ethernet port on motherboard, and then we need 4 other ports. So then you can go out and buy one of these server cards, and this is a quad board, so it's got 4 10, 100, 1000 base T ports on it. So that's great. I actually bought 2 of them, and I did that because I wanted to be able to use it to expand it later. And since I was going through the trouble of building this, I wanted to make it expandable. So I got these quad server cards, and we'll go through the details of all these parts and and I'll actually put a link for the parts list that I used for this computer in the comments. So if you want to go really dig into what I used, then and see the list and how much it costs, then you will be able to see the whole parts list. I used a website called PCPartPicker.com, and they didn't have the server cards. I actually picked those out, but they actually, you could just kind of go through the, it's almost like a checklist, you know, by the motherboard, by the enclosure, you know, by the power supply, cooling fan, CD player or DVD player, hard drive, all that other fun stuff. And it has a real nice feature. It's got a compatibility checker, so it'll say, oh yeah, this won't work with this, you know, this CPU won't work with this motherboard, and that sort of thing. And I don't know how good it is. It's the first time I've used it, but it was real handy for a checklist of, okay, I need this, I need that, I need this, I need that. So, so yeah, go check it out if you want to ever build a PC. But let's talk about these server cards for a minute. So these are HP. I don't remember. We'll have to look up the details, but they're an HP server card, quad port, 4 ports. And I have bought these, not this exact card, but I have bought server cards like this before and plugged them into off-the-shelf computers that, you know, you go buy, you know, just cheapy, you know, from Micro Center or Fry's or wherever your local electronics store is. Use Newegg or whatever. And I have plugged these things in, and they just flat won't work. Sometimes they don't support the flavor of Linux you want to run. Sometimes they don't have the right motherboard sockets that you need to run the card. It's a whack-a-mole with these things. So before I start building any kind of server that I know I'm gonna be putting these cards in, these server cards, it doesn't matter what brand they are, I always buy the card first. And I buy the card first, and I get the specs on it, and then I go buy a PC. And I make sure the motherboard and everything else, power supply, sometimes these things suck up a bunch of power, especially if they're optical cards. So I buy the card first, and I fit the PC to the card, which is usually just the opposite of what you would think you would normally do. Usually you buy a PC, you would think, and then plug your peripherals in there. And I'm sure any gamers out there that have bought high-dollar video cards and some of these other audio cards and what other cards they need for their controllers are probably shaking their heads saying, yeah, been there, done it. So always go get the server card first, download the specs, and then make sure you then build a PC around it. I absolutely hate building PCs. Back in the olden days when there were 286, 386 PCs, it was actually cheaper to build a PC than it was to buy one already made and tested, or already built and tested. And so, you know, we built PCs. And I'm telling you, there was no beating greater than building a PC and then trying to figure out why the floppy drive didn't work, or the hard drive wouldn't spin up, or sometimes you'd boot it and nothing would happen, you know. And it was just a beating. I swore I'd never do it again. But I have found through multiple beatings in the past that if you're building a server type PC, you buy the server card and then you build the server around the server cards. and your life will be a lot simpler. Don't try to buy one of these cards and stick it in some generic PC, you know, some cheap $500 PC you can find online, because you will hate life. On the flip side of that, also don't go out and buy a real super duper expensive gaming PC thinking that your server cards will work in that, because the problem with that is sometimes these server cards will be older and they won't be compatible with all the new whiz-bang motherboards that gamers use for their PCs. So you just have to be real careful, because what is worse, going out and buying a $500 PC and realizing this isn't going to work, these server cards aren't going to work, or going out and buying a $3,000 gaming PC and finding out these server cards aren't going to work in it either. So I'm telling you, buy the server cards first, build the PC around it, you'll be right. One last thing about these server cards I wanted to mention is when you go to buy them, make sure they have an Intel chipset on them. And I know I'm probably going to get a lot of negative comments about that comment, but I have learned by past experience that most suppliers will support, or almost all of them will support, the Intel chipset and their drivers. And if you go out and buy a board that might be the coolest thing ever, or if you go out and buy a really cheap board that doesn't have the Intel chipset on it, your chances of it being compatible have went way down. So and then you have software problems, you know, and they don't like the drivers for them. So this is not an endorsement for Intel, it's just a fact of life that most people will support the Intel chipsets and be backwards compatible with them. Okay, so a couple other quick notes when you're speccing out your hardware is, you know, try to remember what software you're going to be running on it. I am going to make this a virtual machine server, and I'm going to be running VMware on it. I know there's other virtual machine servers out there, but I am truly a VMware fanboy. I have been using VMware for as long as since they were just giving it away, and it is just rock solid. And I don't use I'm going to put VMware Pro on here, and I think it's about $275, and I know that sounds a little bit expensive, but I know it's going to be rock solid. It's going to work with my server cards and all the other hardware. So I'm very, very comfortable paying that money for it. The other thing that you need to keep in mind is let's say this is just a one-off test. What are you going to do with it when you're done? Well, you know, if it's a VMware server, it's generic. You can put whatever, you know, Linux, Windows, Solaris kernel on it that you want, and use it however you want. And also, we want to make sure that when you're speccing out the hardware, that you get hardware that's new enough so it's viable for at least 5 years. I know you probably expected to see me put it all together in one video, but I wanted to kind of go through the thought process of why I was building it, because, you know, money is tight, and you want to make sure, you know, before you know, all this stuff is about $1,000, and you want to make sure that, you know, before you go spending your money on it, it's going to do what you want it to do, and you don't want to have any mistakes. And I think planning is very important. And that's why I made this first video, is to kind of go through the thought process of why I was building it, you know, what the options were as far as, you know, test equipment, and or buying an off-the-shelf computer that, you know, for half the price, why I didn't do that. So I thought it would be very helpful to kind of go through that, and also, you know, when I'm done with it, let's say 5 years from now I'm done with it, well, it can still run, you know, virtual machines. I can use it for file servers or whatever. It will still be useful. So if I need to repurpose it, one of the other things that's going to be nice about this is so we're going to use it to test the Cisco lag with, probably using Iperf or maybe something else. I don't know. I might poke around the internet and see what else is out there. But I've used Iperf before, and I'm comfortable with it. But one of the other things we can do with it, the PC, is we can run SIPp on it and do some SIPp call loading, and that'll be pretty fun. And usually that runs pretty thin unless you're running media, and that can get a little processor intensive. So this will be a good box for that as well. So SIPp is, if you're not familiar, is the call processing protocol for doing voice over IP. So anyway, I hope you like this video, and if you do, give it a big thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the comments below, and I'll see you later.